Britain is surrounded by sea. The sea has shaped the British Isles and has had a profound influence on the life of the British people. For centuries, the British endeavoured to rule the waves. We had a powerful navy. Explorers found new sailing routes and discovered new lands. Many of our national heroes were sailors. Socially and economically, British life was dominated by the sea. The fishing and shipbuilding industries were of huge economic importance. British shipyards built some of the world's finest ships, and the seaside attracted crowds of holidaymakers, despite the British weather. In the last 50 years, the number of fishermen has fallen by over a half. Today, there are fewer than a dozen major shipyards in operation, whereas before the Second World War, there were nearly 100. The economic significance of the sea is declining, and Britain no longer has a vast navy. But for many British people, the sea still plays an important part in their lives.
Both my grandfathers went to sea in sailing ships carrying cargo. My father went to sea and sail. They went to the Mediterranean and Newfoundland and the Caribbean. My mother's father was a shipwright, shipbuilding in Salcombe, and he was in Salcombe until the wooden shipbuilding died out. But he went to sea as ship's carpenter on sailing vessels. And my father's father went to sea on sailing vessels that were Salcombe built also. The sea has always been part of my life. I can't imagine life without it, really.
My father had been in the Royal Navy for 2 World Wars, and I suppose the sea was in my blood, although that sounds a bit of a cliche. Having said that, my son, who's 19, he's gone to sea after me. But the big point, I suppose, is travelling around the world, because I must have been around the world, I suppose, 25 times whilst I was at sea with P&O, and loved every minute of it.
I've just always loved the sea, and I like the sea when it's wild, but from the land. I prefer it not so wild when I'm on a boat. Every emotion you can think of, the sea will portray. Sometimes it's like a really kindly mother, and other times it's just so dangerous and scary and exhilarating, and everything in between.
A yacht sailing along in the wind is one of the most romantic images of the sea.
Sailing has become a very popular sport around the coast of Britain. Thousands of people learn to sail all sorts of different boats, anything from small dinghies to ocean-going yachts.
It gets me away from work pressure, because when you're sailing, you have to focus on that and nothing else, so it's a good relaxation. You've got plenty of clean air. You can get away from people that you really don't want to be around. And conversely, you can be around people that you want to be around, because when you're in a boat with someone, you have to get on with them.
You can go and live in places that you'd never, ever be able to have a house or even stay, and you can stay for as long as you want and move on. And you can go out to sea, or you can come in and stay in the creeks, and it's just endless, really.
The sea is wild and unpredictable.
Part of the excitement is the challenge of the unknown. But the sea can also be extremely dangerous, an enemy, not a friend.
Around the coast of the British Isles, there are more than 200 lifeboat stations. Rescue crews of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution are called out nearly 5,000 times a year and save on average 1,500 lives. The lifeboat crews are nearly all volunteers.
I think all waters are dangerous everywhere. I think the great danger is that people perhaps don't prepare their boats or themselves sufficiently for going out. That can be very dangerous no matter where you are.
Anyone can buy a boat and just go set off in it with an engine on the back. They're not required in England to have safety equipment, which in my view is quite appalling. So you have, in August here, several thousand of these boats, a lot with no safety equipment, and people that don't necessarily know what they're doing. So the recipe is there for a lot of chaos on the water.
How long does it take to launch the lifeboat?
We normally do it in about 6 minutes, from the first call for the crew, which is done on pages, through to the lifeboat leaving the moorings. The crew for this lifeboat is 7, and we have 14 members who are there to choose from. There's only one permanent member of the crew here, and that's the coxswain mechanic, which is Frank Smith. All the rest are volunteers, and they all have other jobs.
It's a great reward to be able to take somebody ashore and realise you've saved their life.
Gives you a very nice feeling when you've been out and done something and saved somebody. As you can't describe it, really.
What's your own attitude to the sea? Do you think it's dangerous?
Oh yeah, the sea has got to be respected. It's, you can never beat the sea. You try to equal it, but you'll never beat it.
Despite all the dangers and sometimes feeling seasick, there's nothing that quite compares with this sense of freedom.
Perhaps the sailors who set out to discover new worlds felt the same desire to escape from everyday life on land.